8. Cam. Cam's ringtone is unique. He designed it himself. The first strain of Mozart's Ian clean natch music layered over Hey Jude, layered over a Coltrane sax riff. It all blends together perfectly. Far better than he does, but it's a constant reminder at his lowest moments that a mashup can either shine or clash. It all depends on the care one takes with it. At 2:19 a.m., however, he despises his ringtone. There are few who know his personal number and none of those who do call him at this hour unless there was an emergency. He wants to let it go for a second ring, but Una stirs, and he doesn't want this, whatever it is, to wake her up. So he answers it, hurrying to the bathroom and closing the door. As he suspected, the news is not good. There's been a breakout in the boys' ward. 2 male rewinds are AWOL, Dr. Pettigrew says, his voice as always like an accusation. The idea of there being such thing as AWOL rewinds, like AWOL unwinds, sticks in Cam's mind like some bad stew meat. 2 of them. Do we know which ones? 39 and 47. Names, please. I don't know off the top of my head. And where was the guard? He got a million excuses. Didn't I tell you we needed more guards at night? Cam resists the urge to lash back. Told you so's don't help the situation. But as much as Cam hates to admit it, Pettigrew was right. But before he allows this to rattle his confidence, he lays out a course of action. Scour and secure the perimeter of the complex. Then work inward. The most important thing is that they don't get off the grounds. If they do, the situation could mushroom far beyond any hope for damage control. When he steps out of the bathroom, Una is already up and dressed. Have they checked if any vehicles are missing? Clearly, she heard his side of the conversation. I'll take care of this. Go back and sleep. Spare me the chivalry. You can use all the help you can get. She tosses him his pants, then ties her hair back with a ribbon. For once, he resists the playful urge to pull it out. 9. Kellyanna. The party goes late. They always do. She probably should have stayed at her friend's house and slept on the couch. But her friend's furniture always smells like wet dog. Or maybe it smells of her friend's brother, who smells like wet dog. She should have stayed, but her house is only 3 blocks away, a 5-minute walk. And the town of Quanakaki is notoriously safe. Usually. There are no silent nights in Molokai. The dark hours are alive with crickets and katydids. Sometimes the chorus can be deafening. As she walks home from the party, she has the sense of being watched. But of course, that's typical. Whenever she walks alone in the dark, she feels this way. It's human nature, a primal survival instinct crying wolf. The feeling is no stronger today than at any other time, so she dismisses it as she always does. It isn't until she turns the key in the lock that a shape emerges from the shadows. His hand covers her mouth before she can scream, a hand that doesn't match the rest of him. He pushes her aside, and although she struggles, he's much stronger. She knows it's a rewind, but until he speaks, she doesn't realize that she's seen him before. Prom night, he says, win the bet. It's the horrible one from the fence. She sees his eyes now, dead, lifeless. That void in his eyes makes it all the more awful. She breaks free and finally screams, but realizes she's alone in the house. Her father works the night shift, and her mother is at a teachers' conference on Maui. The neighbors must have heard, but will they get here fast enough to stop him from reliving whatever horrific prom night his fragmented brain remembers, and whatever twisted bet that particular unwind made with his sleazy friends? She races to the kitchen, thinking she'll escape through the back door, but realizing how unlikely that is. The kitchen has weapons, though. She reaches for the knife drawer, but he tackles her to the ground from behind. With her hand firmly on the drawer handle, the entire drawer comes out, sending knives and skewers and wooden spoons flying across the room, which means he has access to as many potential weapons as she does. Standing above her now, he starts blathering out names. Audrey, Katrina, Camille, Hazel. Are these girls that some unwind in his head once victimized? It isn't until he adds Andrew to the list that she realizes they're all hurricanes. Category 5, he shouts over her screams. Surf's up! He's calling her a storm, and he intends to tame her. As he moves toward her, she thrusts her hands out across the floor and grabs the first thing she can, swinging it at his head. It's an iron ladle. Not what she wanted, but she swings it hard enough to open a seam on his forehead. She swings again and again, and it keeps him at bay just long enough for a neighbor to arrive at the back door, pounding, then kicking the door. The door jamb splinters. The man bursts in, and the unwind turns tail, pushing past him, but not before grabbing the pistol from the man's hand. The rewind, now armed, disappears into the night. Only now that he's gone does Kilana burst into sobs, allowing herself to be comforted by her neighbor. 10. Keaton. He regains consciousness, knowing he's not in his bed, but not yet realizing where he is or why he's there. Then, awareness begins to shoot back at him in staccato machine gun bursts outside. Perimeter fence, hit in the head. Dirk. It was Dirk. What time is it? It's still night. Does anyone know they're gone? Probably. There's a gash on his temple. It stopped bleeding. Sure he didn't lose much blood, but he's still dizzy when he gets up. Concussion? Possibly. Not important now. What's important is finding Dirk. So Keaton squeezes his way through the hole in the fence, birthing himself into a world he might be ready for, but is certainly not ready for him. He follows the road for more than a mile until he reaches a portside town. It's still dark and the morning seems no closer. There seems to be a lot of activity for this time of night. Lights are on in many homes. Cars are on the street. It doesn't occur to him why. He's too focused on searching for Dirk. He will be hiding in the shadows, lurking. That's what Dirk does. Even in the light of day, he lurks. It's only when he sees a line of people with flashlights that Keaton realizes this is a search. It seems half the town is up, and Keaton knows who they must be searching for. What the hell did Dirk do? Keaton hurries to duck into the cover of some bushes, but one of the flashlight catches him. Look there, I think it's him. They start running in his direction, and he pushes through the bushes and into a backyard, leaps a hedge, and is out onto another street. But there are people everywhere. He's spotted again, and another half-dozen people take chase. At the end of the street, headlights light him up for everyone to see. It's him, someone shouts. Look, he's got one umber hand and a cut on his forehead, just like Kellyanna said. He spins, looking for an escape route, but there is none. He's surrounded on all sides, and he knows that the crowd around him senses triumph. They move in. No, he shouts. Eraser, fumble, red X. He forces the right word. Mistake, you're making a mistake. The buff-looking teen closest to him, one of the ones throwing stones the other day, glares at him with a brutal look of hatred and says, You're the one who made a mistake, and it's going to be your last. 11. Cam. This could be worse, Una tells Cam as they drive the short distance to Kuanakaki, followed by a whole military entourage. Really? How? The girl could have been hurt, but she wasn't. Practically the same moment the security detail found the hole in the perimeter fence, the call came from the Kawanakaki sheriff about the attack. One of your damn monsters came after a girl, the sheriff had spoken with such seething vitriol in his voice it made Cam wince. I want you to know I'm authorizing the use of deadly force. Cam pounds the steering wheel of the Jeep hard enough to bruise his hand. Easy, says Una. That won't help anyone. Then she adds, besides, those hands were meant for better things. He takes a deep breath and tries to dispel his frustration. This is entirely his fault. He should have given in to everyone else's paranoia. He should have treated them like prisoners. He shouldn't have let his personal feelings get in the way. Maybe the rewinds need to prove their humanity before it can be granted to them. But he knows it's not all the rewinds, is it? There's only one that's the problem, one that's profoundly different from the others. Number 00047, Dirk Mullen. Even when he chose his name, he just pointed randomly to the page, as if he didn't care, as if he knew his existence didn't warrant a name. For so long, Cam had obsessed over whether or not he himself had a soul. Now he realizes he must, because he's seen into the eyes of one who doesn't. And that void within, whatever it is the very definition of hell. Of all the rewinds to escape, why did it have to be 47? What about the other one, Una asks. Keaton, Cam says. Dirk might still be a number, but Keaton is not. I wouldn't be surprised if 47 killed him. I hope not, Una says. He's a good kid. They all are, Cam points out, then has to qualify. All but one. They're headed to the police station, but a commotion on what should be a quiet residential street pulls their attention. Shouts and headlights and revving engines, like some sort of street race. Then, the blast of a shotgun followed with silence. I was wrong, Una says as they turn a corner and race towards the crowd. This couldn't get any worse. 12. Keaton. 5 minutes before Cam and Una hear the gunshot, the mob's emotion reaches a fever pitch. They will have justice. They will not wait for it to be meted out. They will take it themselves. Keaton cannot speak. They have him gagged. But what would it matter if he could? They did not listen to his protest before. Why should they listen to him now? They have their man. He fits the description, and what are the chances, really, that there'd be 2 rewinds running around town? Much less 2 rewinds with one umber hand and a cut on the forehead. Keaton knows from the angry shouts what Dirk has done. Not the details, but the gist of it, and it's enough. He doesn't blame the crowd for what they're doing. Were he one of them, he might do the same. Or maybe not, because their choice of punishment is far too visceral, and Keaton feels the terror of every single unwind within him. 100 screams fill his head. They have him stretched out on the ground in the middle of an intersection with ropes tied to each arm and each leg. The ends of those 4 ropes are tied to 4 vehicles, each pointed in a different direction. The ropes are slack now, but they won't be for long. The buff-looking teen gets in his face, the one who probably threw the first stone the other day. He's so incensed, spittle flies from his mouth when he speaks. You're gonna die, you know that, don't you? You tell him, Todd, goads one of his buddies. Keaton doesn't give him the satisfaction of mumbling from behind the gag. This is what they used to do to people who didn't deserve to live, Todd says, back when punishment fit the crime. It's called quartering. We're gonna pull apart what never should have been put together in the first place. Engines rev. He feels vibration in the ropes. They pull just taut enough to make his joints ache. He can hear people in the crowd talking to one another. Some are entirely on Todd's side and wait for this horrible circus to commence. But there are other voices too. This is going too far, he hears a woman say. Someone should stop this. Someone. Not her. The faint voices of protest aren't really interested in stopping this, Keaton realizes. All they want is to assuage their own guilt, so after it happens, they can say to themselves, well, I wanted to put an end to it, but nobody listened, which makes them just as complicit as the others. Engines rev again. He closes his eyes and tenses his muscles, but he knows that he is no match for the horsepower in those 4 vehicles. Then he hears a girl's voice. She's cursing. She's yelling at people to get out of her way. He opens his eyes to see her pushing through the crowd. Her eyes are red from crying. Her jaw is hardened in resolve, but as she looks at him, her expression changes. Her head tilts a bit. She suddenly looks confused, troubled, but in a different way than she was just a moment ago. Keaton recognizes her too. This is the girl that came up to him at the fence. This is the one who was kind to him. Kellyanna. He resolves to hold eye contact with her for as long as he can, until the cars throw their transmissions into gear, which will be any second now. This isn't him, she says, quietly at first, then again, then more loudly. This isn't him. Todd storms to her like he might strike her, but doesn't. What do you mean it isn't him? Of course it is. He tries to move away from Keaton. You let us take care of this. He hurt you enough. No, she shakes him off and comes closer to Keaton. You can't do this. Todd ignores her and raises his hand, signaling the drivers. Then a shotgun blast rings out. It brings everyone to silence. Another man, a police officer, maybe the sheriff, comes forward holding the shotgun he has just fired into the air. She says you have the wrong rewind. You want to go to prison, Todd? Not just for murder, but for killing the wrong man? It's not a man, screeches Todd. That's right, says the sheriff calmly. It's a boy. Now cut him loose. That's when Cam and Una arrive on his other side. Untie him, or I swear to you, every one of you will be held accountable, the sheriff warns. The spirit of the mob seems to melt into the ground. It's no longer a mob, but a bewildered group of people, sheepish and ashamed. Now people crowd around Keaton, untying him. It's Cam who takes the gag from his mouth, and Keaton coughs, choking on his own saliva. It's all right, Keaton, Cam says. It's all right. He tries to stand, but his joints ache from the strain, as if he's been on a medieval rack. Una helps him to his feet. He turns and finds Kellyanna, who is still there, but keeps her distance. He holds up his umber hand to show her. Not me, he says. Left hand, not right. I know, she says. Then the sheriff calls out to the crowd. Everyone better get yourself back home before I remember who was here tonight. People begin to meander away. Then, from the edge of the crowd, someone says, Hey, where the hell is my Harley? 13. Cam. Cam's brain has begun to feel disjointed, fragmented. It always does when stress starts to overwhelm him. He can't let it happen. Not now. Lockdown, he says to himself, and he clamps down on his panic. The crew of his own personal submarine must not mutiny. The first clue to Dirk's whereabouts is the missing motorcycle. While the mob was focused on lynching Keaton, Dirk must have snuck in behind them and, masked by the mob's frenzy, taken off. Now he's loose to do whatever damage he intends to do. Cam suspects the attack on the girl will not be an isolated incident, unless they can catch him. It's going to be a rampage, and there's no telling how bad it will be. A part of Cam wants to run, just like Dirk trying to escape the mob's judgment, but he can't. He won't. He looks at Una, and as always, her presence stabilizes him. You didn't make him, Una says, reading him better than he reads himself. What he is not your fault. No, Cam admits, but the fact that he escaped, that is my fault. Which means I'm accountable for anything that he does. There's nothing she can say that can soften that reality. I'll deal with the fallout later, Cam says. What matters now is that we catch him. As he looks around, he sees more and more military personnel from the compound arriving, not quite outnumbering the mob, but their presence begins to subdue the worst of the hate-mongers, even more than the sheriff's presence had. Some people leave, but more linger, probably anticipating a more accurate reckoning. Not mob justice, but at this point, any justice will do. With the support of troops under his jurisdiction, Cam tells the sheriff, We'll take it from here. This is our problem. But the sheriff isn't about to yield. It stopped being your problem when your thing attacked that girl. For a moment, it looks like there's going to be a standoff until Keaton comes between them. Sunset, he says. Into the sunset. Keaton sputters and grimaces, trying to force coherence to his thoughts. What's this one babbling about? Asks the sheriff with no patience for it. Shh, says Cam, and gives Keaton time to form his thoughts. Ride into the sunset, he says. Dirk doesn't know. He doesn't know. And Cam gets it. Dirk doesn't know we're on an island. Keaton smiles. On the nose, Dirk doesn't know. Cam has become pretty familiar with the roads on Molokai. For Dirk, taking off into his metaphorical sunset couldn't have been west, or he'd have passed right through the most populated part of town. He would have headed east, away from the populated areas. He'll be on Kamehameha 5 highways, which wraps around the eastern tip of the island and doubles along the north shore. How could he not know this is an island, the sheriff asks. His mind hasn't integrated as well as the others, Cam explains. He probably can't think clearly enough to figure it out. The moon has already set, so he'll have no way to gauge his direction. It's a slow curve going around the eastern tip, so he'll think he's going straight. We'll just have to cross a few miles to the north shore, and we'll catch him as soon as he loops back. And if you're wrong, the sheriff asks. I'm not, Cam says. Then looks at Keaton. We're not. But just to be sure, Cam sends a fleet of jeeps down Kamehameha 5 highway in pursuit. Then he and the bulk of his forces cross the narrow width of the island to the north shore and wait for Dirk to arrive. 14. Dirk. Me, wheels, road, squint, face, wind, vroom vroom. Ocean on the right, ocean on the right, smarter than them, faster than them, vroom vroom. Ocean on the right, born to be wild. Steppenwolf. Lone wolf, no one catches a lone wolf. Stupid people, killing Keaton. Stupid Keaton, saw them do it. Saw them tie him. Rope, 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 rope. Car, truck, van. Stretch Armstrong. Couldn't watch. Took Harley. No one saw. Stupid people. Parts of me know how. Clutch. Accelerator. Vroom vroom. Parts don't know how. Make 'em learn fast. Almost fall. Learn quick or die. Me. Not like the other rewinds. Know that. Hate that. Think that they're better than me. Better than them. Hate them. Keaton dead. Hate all the rest. Make them pay. Still night. Still of the night. Morning soon. Let freedom ring. Far from here. Vroom vroom. Ocean on the right. Heading south? North? Doesn't matter. Free either way. Find something pretty? Curvy? Prom night. Make her like it. Win the bet. Make them all like it. Smarter than them. Stronger. Stupid girl. Find her someday. Kill her for hurting me. But not now. Later. Later, you think. Later than you think. Dawn. Horizon. Ocean on the right. And ahead? And ahead? No. Can't be. Jeeps and police buffs. Roadblock. And Camus Comprix. Can't be faster than me. How are they here? How? And Keaton. Dead? Not dead. Ghosts. All ghosts, are they? Bird in my ear. Not a bird, a trank. Mist. Nowhere to go. Mist again. Ocean to the right. And a pier. Nowhere else to go. Vroom vroom. Road, then wood. Wheels on rattling wood. A shack at the end of the pier. Nowhere else to go. 15. Keaton. The sharpshooters aren't all that sharp. It's the tranks. They complain. They don't behave like standard bullets. It's not our fault we missed him. No one wants to take the responsibility for Dirk, but no one but Cam. Keaton can see the torment in Cam's face. He wishes he could ease it. All Cam did was try to give them some dignity. It worked for Keaton, it worked for all the others, but not for Dirk, because Dirk is different. Dirk is missing the spark, which means there's nothing holding them together but stitches. There's a small burger joint at the end of the pier. This is where Dirk goes to take refuge. The motorcycle skids out from under him as he nears it. He gets up limping. The sharpshooters try to trank him again. They take down a seagull. It would be funny if things weren't so dire. One trank shatters a window, saving Dirk the trouble of having to do it himself. He shoots back once with the stolen pistol, a wild shot that disappears into the dawn. Then he climbs in through the broken window to escape the barrage of tranks. Does he understand what happened? Keaton wonders. Has it finally occurred to him, his fragmented mind, that they're on an island? That all things here come full circle? He's cornered, Cam says. He's armed, Una warns. He could jump, suggests the sheriff, swim to shore and escape. Keaton shakes his head. Davy Jones, he says. Sink, drown. Rewinds can't swim. Not yet. Must learn again, harder than motorcycle. One of Cam's military officers suggests they take the whole building out. A single mortar shell could do it. That pier is a landmark, the sheriff points out. The officer shrugs. Doesn't a landmark need to be on land? We're not blowing anything up, Cam announces. Can we get close enough to shoot a canister of tear gas inside? Smoke him out? They throw ideas back and forth. Keaton has one of his own, but he's not going to tell them. They'll just dismiss him. Keaton begins to walk down the pier. What the hell is he doing? Shouts the sheriff. Get back here. Keaton ignores him. Let them tackle him or trank him. That will be the only way to stop him. He knows what he needs to do. Hand of my hand. He and Dirk are, in some twisted way, family, and family takes care of its own. Cam must understand this, because Keaton hears him say, let him go. Dawn evolves into sunrise in the minute it takes to reach the shack at the end of the pier. There's blood on the motorcycle lying on the wooden slats of the pier. Blood on the windowsill Dirk climbed over. Behind him, military buffs take position on the pier, weapons drawn, but keep their distance. Keaton glances back at them once, then climbs through the window. Dirk sits in a corner, his pants are ripped, and his leg is torn open from when he flew off the bike, right along one of his rewound seams. Dead, Dirk shouts, waving the gun carelessly. Saw you, dead. Almost dead, Keaton says calmly. They let me go. Knew it was you, not me. Stupid people. Keaton sits beside him, says nothing. He waits to see what Dirk will do. He wonders if Dirk will shoot him, or maybe, realizing there's no way out, shoot himself. But then it occurs to Keaton that Dirk would never do that. It's a choice that Dirk is incapable of making. You have to be alive to kill yourself. A wave of pity suddenly washes over Keaton. What must it be like to go through the motions of life, yet not be alive? Keaton knows that he himself lives because he has compassion for this poor unfortunate creature before him. A creature that is doomed to be nothing more than a collection of parts. Dirk suddenly grabs his hand of my hand. Die with me? Butch and Sundance? As one stray memory in Keaton's internal community recalls, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid died in a hopeless shootout. Keaton has no desire to recreate that scene. No, says Keaton. Instead says, George and Lenny. Dirk looks at him questioningly. He doesn't get the reference, just as well. Give me the gun, Dirk. It's perhaps the first complete self-motivated sentence he said. Dirk's dead eyes narrow. Why? Because I asked? Why? Dirk holds the gun tighter. He aims it towards Keaton, and Keaton studies his eyes for a hint of anything. But no, there's no torment, no remorse, no fear, or even resignation. He couldn't shoot Keaton, but he doesn't. Or he could shoot Keaton, but he doesn't. Instead, he hands the gun to him. I shoot bad, Dirk says. You better. Talk better, think better, shoot better. Probably, admits Keaton. You go shoot them all, is what we have to do. Take no prisoners. Keaton looks at the gun in his hand. His umber hand doesn't know how to hold it, but the sienna one does. In fact, it almost feels familiar. He wonders what that's about, but then decides he'd rather not know. No prisoners, Dirk. 16, Cam. This was a mistake. He knows it. Just one more in a whole series of mistakes. He should have gone in there himself. Yet he knows if he had, Dirk would have shot him dead in an instant. Keaton was the only one who stood a chance. But how do you reason with a creation that knows no reason? Not even its own reason to be. We can still take out the structure, suggests his mortar-happy officer, if all else fails. Then, a single gunshot splits the morning, sending the gulls flapping from the pier like a release of doves. Cam holds his breath. The front door of the burger shack opens, and Keaton steps out. The gun is in his hand by his side. All weapons on the pier are trained on him. Lower your weapons, Cam orders. They obey. Keaton walks down the pier toward Cam and puts the gun in Cam's hand. Done, is all Keaton says. Then he climbs into the passenger seat of the nearest Jeep and closes his eyes, waiting for whatever's coming next. There's an old leper cemetery by a rustic white church on a western Molokai bluff. Dirk is buried with a small ceremony by a military pastor. No one else is in attendance but Cam and Una. The pastor says his litany by rote. Words about God's mercy, everlasting life, and how Dirk's soul is now remanded to the Almighty. It makes Cam grimace, feeling himself a hypocrite to be party to the travesty. But then, who is he to decide if Dirk truly was soulless? Better to err on the side of grace. The whole incident of Dirk's escape and subsequent death is reported to Cam's superiors in Washington. Dr. Pettigrew writes a scathing incident of how Cam handled it, but it's balanced by the account of the sheriff, who, to Cam's surprise, commends Cam for his leadership in the crisis. In the end, there's no official inquest or investigation, not even the obligatory slap on the wrist. Are you disappointed? Una asks him once things slip back into place, into the shade of normality around the compound. Actually, yeah, a little. The truth is, the whole Molokai compound is an albatross around the neck of the military, and the rewinds are so unloved as to be completely ignored. Now Cam realizes that he's no different. He was once the military's shining star, but now he's the reminder of their unchecked hubris. Clearly, they'd rather not be reminded. Being ignored has its advantages, Una is quick to point out. Dignity doesn't grow under a microscope. 3 weeks after the incident, there is a day of rejoicing, a new milestone in the life of the Rewinds. 6 of them, 3 boys and 3 girls, the 6 most well-integrated, will begin attending Molokai High School, 10th grade. Arbitrary, since their internal communities range from 13 to 17, but it seems unnecessarily cruel to make them freshmen. To Cam's surprise, the suggestion of allowing the Rewinds to attend Molokai High came from the local population, perhaps as a response to the hate mongers. Sometimes prejudice can be slapped upside the head by tolerance, especially now that people in town have come to see Keaton Shelton as a sort of folk hero. The night before the big day, Cam and Una hold a dinner for the 6 schoolbound rewinds in the formal dining room, where proactive citizenry once wined, dined, and bribed the movers and shakers of the world. No longer are these rewinds wearing drab, convalescent scrubs. These boys are in jeans, with comfortable shirts, and Una made a trip to Honolulu to find the latest fashion for girls. Dinner conversation is upbeat and only a little bit disjointed and stilted. After the dessert, the half-dozen rewinds cajole Cam and Una to play guitar for them, an impromptu duet that ends the evening. It took the rewinds themselves to convince Una to play in front of an audience, something Cam could never do on his own. Then, the evening concludes, but as the others board golf carts that will take them back to the rewind ward, Keaton lingers. He comes up to Cam and points at his own temple. Someone here played guitar, but badly. Then he holds up his umber hand. This hand played drums, I think, but no memory of it. He sighs. How are you feeling about tomorrow? Cam asks him. Keaton smiles. Got butterflies, but they're good. Then he thinks for a moment. Hardest part is that I don't know what I don't know. Cam gets that. Everyone codes and stores memories differently. When it comes to education, a rewind's mind can be like Swiss cheese. Keaton might know the history of the world, but have no concept of the order of it at all. You'll figure it out, Cam tells him. Be patient. Keaton accepts the advice. Left a present for you, he says, and nods towards the living room. Then he turns and boards a golf cart with 2 of the rewind girls, who laugh and talk with giddy anticipation about tomorrow's re-entry into the human race. Cam can't help but smile as they ride off. Look at you, Una says, taking his hand. The proud papa. Nah, he says, just an older brother. Una goes upstairs. It'll be an early and eventful day for all of them tomorrow. A momentous day. Best to get a good night's sleep. But before heading upstairs for the night, Cam detours through the living room. At first, he doesn't see Keaton's gift, because it's just sitting on the coffee table, masquerading a paperweight. When he finally notices it, he laughs with pleasant surprise. Sometimes the most meaningful gifts are the ones that come back to you. And for Camus Complex, no gift could be more meaningful than an old Rubik's Cube, perfectly solved.